you're looking at the miracles of Christ, very importantly, when Jesus did things, this phrase is found attached to him quite often, that he was moved with compassion, moved by compassion. Jesus did not heal people just because they were sick and to make them feel better. He didn't raise the dead just so they'd be alive again, because everybody that he healed died. But he was moved by compassion. He did treat people with compassion. And, you know, we ought to do that. We ought to make sure that we are compassionate. And, you know, you can talk about driving and all that. The older I get, the more I realize some people drive slow because there could be a situation going on that I'm not aware of. You know, I remember I was having a bad day. I was driving down 66 going home. And I was probably going 30 miles an hour, and it's a 45-mile-an-hour zone. Most people only drive 30 normally, but I saw myself driving 30, and I got to thinking, I'm doing it because I don't feel very well, and I don't trust myself. And so when I get behind people now, I'm thinking, what are they going through? You know, they just might find out their kid's in the hospital. They might find out this or that, or who knows what's going on. So I try to be more compassionate. And I think we ought to do that. We ought to start putting ourselves in other people's shoes sometimes. And, you know, they did something maybe we thought was stupid, pulled out in front of, you know, when you're driving down the highway. Have you ever done that?
You what now?
Have you ever pulled out in front of somebody?
Absolutely.
Yeah. I mean, you didn't need to.
I go fast.
Yeah, and you felt bad about it. But,
Yeah.
yeah, right. But when somebody does it to you, that's different, you know. We're idiots now, you know. But we have to think about those things. And I think it's very important for our ministries we do that. Jesus moved by compassion several different times. And we see the feeding of the 5,000. The 5,000 were Jews. And that's important to the story because the feeding of the 4,000 were Gentiles. And that's why those two stories, Matthew 14, Matthew 15, are right together. And it's kind of like wondering, okay, well, Jesus just fed the multitudes. Why would he turn around and feed the multitudes? He fed the multitudes in chapter 14, and then the disciples kind of questioned him in Matthew 15. Why would they question him in Matthew 15 if they just witnessed Matthew 14? But it's because now they're dealing with Gentiles. And the Jews were a very prejudiced people. We've never seen that in this country, but other places sometimes have that prejudice. Simply because of somebody of a different race or what have you. And so the disciples thought, you know, yeah, Jesus fed the Jews, that's the right thing to do. Now he's feeding the Gentiles thinking, we've got a problem here. I mean, Peter very much struggled with prejudice. He let it affect his ministry a couple of times in the Bible. And so how many other times did it happen? So, and we all tend to do that in some way or the other. Your prejudice might not be racial, but it might be in other ways. And there are a lot of people who are prejudiced in different ways, different certain types of people. Here in the sunny South, we talk about Yankees, what have you. We think of them as different, and they're just people. Jesus was compassionate towards the leper in Mark chapter 1. The demon possessed. The woman who had lost her son. And the two blind men, Matthew 20. You know, it's easy for us to forget the blessings that we have in life. If we were living 400 years ago, would any of y'all be considered blind then?
Absolutely.
My wife would be considered blind because she can't see 3 foot in front of her without glasses. We have glasses now to correct all that. So imagine the number of people, very likely in these days, who had ailments that, where they couldn't see things up close, or near sight or far sight, what have you. Until 1885, when the first vaccine was invented. So really, in a very short period of time in history, we've had some of the luxuries that we have today. Matthew 9. Jesus went about all the cities and villages, teaching in their synagogues and preaching the gospel of the kingdom, and healing every sickness and every disease among the people. But when he saw the multitudes, he was moved with compassion on them, because they fainted, were scattered abroad, as sheep having no shepherd. Then said he unto his disciples, the harvest truly is plenteous, but the laborers are few. Pray ye therefore the Lord of the harvest, that he will send forth laborers into his harvest. But you notice what Jesus was moved with compassion about. It says he healed all the sick. He's not moved with compassion towards them, it says. When he saw the multitudes, he was moved with compassion. Now, it wasn't the sick, it was the multitudes who what? Who had no leadership, had no shepherd to lead them. The priesthood had fallen away by Jesus' day. You had Ananias and Caiaphas, who were the high priests, who were wicked men. And so, if there's no priesthood, what's the people going to do? And so that's where Jesus moved with compassion. And he said, the harvest is plenteous. There's a lot of people out here who would hear the gospel. But who's going to save these things? So pray therefore, Lord of the harvest, that he will send forth laborers into his harvest. We ought today to be moved with compassion. Any mission that we've ever supported, digging wells in Guatemala, in Africa, other places, we only gave money or only supported those missions that dug a well in order to give the gospel. Not dug a well just so they'd have water. Because a lot of so-called ministries, that's all they want you to do is give money to dig wells. And yes, they need water over there, but if you dig a well, you go over any place, dig a well, and then preach the gospel to you, they're going to listen. Right? And so the means is send forth laborers to preach the gospel. If it helps them physically, great. But just helping somebody physically and letting them die and go to hell, you've not done them any service. So very much so, we need to think about compassion. But he did have compassion to heal the demon-possessed, raise the dead, and feed the hungry. So, I think it's proper to take care of people's physical needs. I think the church has a responsibility to do that. Not a primary responsibility to do that, but a secondary responsibility is to help people. I don't know why it doesn't happen much anymore, but used to here, all the time I'd get people come by asking for help. And they'd give me some sob stories about why they needed help. And I remember one guy came and I felt so bad. I didn't have a dime. I didn't have anything on me. And he gave me a sob story and I felt so bad. I was upset. He left. I was still so upset that I could not help. And as I was leaving up the street there, I saw him come out of the grocery store up there with two cases of beer under each arm. And I'm thinking, Lord, I know you'd let me hit that guy and forgive me, wouldn't you? But people are like that. And, a lot of times people come here and ask for stuff, and they don't need it. But there are some that come by who do need it. And that's why we have to really think about it and pray. I don't believe that you should ever give because you see a need. Now, it sounds opposite of what we think, but don't give because you see a need. Give because God wants you to give. Because you can have some guy come in and say, listen, I'm from Tennessee, and I was passing through and tried to find a job here. My car broke down. He said, I don't have anything. I'm stranded. Can you help me? And you feed that person. You might just fed the prodigal son. If you didn't feed him, he might have went back home where he belonged. And so that's why you pray about it. And ask God, what should I do? Should I give to this person? I have given to street people, homeless people, whatever you want, on occasion. But I pray about it. Lord, should I do this? Should I not do this? And I know there's some fakes out there. We all know that. I mean, you can watch YouTube videos of people pretending to be poor just to see if they get a handout. And they do. I think one of the news reporters on Channel 12 did that one year and got money from people. Gave it to a charity, I think. But still, people are fake. I mean, I used to work at a place, I had to go to the bank every day. And this person came in, they looked pitiful. And they deposited, I don't know how much money into the bank. And the teller was just, I could see she was fuming. And after he left, I said, well, man, he comes in every day. She said, I can't tell you how much he's got, but he's got more money than I do in the bank. He's got a Lincoln, I think it was, on the other end of the parking lot down there. That's his car down there. And he comes out here, begs every day, gets his money, deposits it, and then goes home in his Lincoln. And she said, it just makes me mad. And I thought, well, I can see that. So yeah, we're going to be deceived by people. But we can't let that stop us. I've had people in my ministry turn on me, and it makes me mad sometimes. And I'm thinking, okay, I'm just not be friends with anybody anymore. But you can't do that. How can you minister to people and not care? So we can't let that stop us. Again, to teach those in need of a shepherd, and that's very important right there. The most important thing is the gospel. Call upon the disciples to pray. Pray for more laborers. Our churches are floundering right now. And people are using coronavirus as an excuse to not witness. Well, I can't witness like I used to because we just can't go out and people's not going to listen. Well, maybe they won't listen the same way they did, so find a new way.
They're using inflation too now.
Yeah, I mean, there's always, people have their excuses of why they don't. And so if you have excuses why you don't, then find some way to do it. Send out disciples as laborers. Pray for others to go out. Maybe you can't do what you used to do, but compassion for God's work. I haven't prayed like this in a long time. Maybe I should. I used to pray quite a bit. The Lord would let me dream about hell and see hell. And even dream about seeing heaven. And I thought, if I can dream about seeing hell, maybe I'd have more enthusiasm in my witnessing. People are dying and going to hell every day. People we know. We've got a job to do. We've got a testimony to maintain. We've got to witness to people. And we can do that with the people we meet. Last week after the class, I had 2 policemen come down here.
Yeah.
And
Well, we left them with that.
yeah, and somebody set the apartment on fire over there, and they came down to see if our video cameras wouldn't caught any of it, but as I talked to them, found out about them. They both said they were saved. One went to goes to Freedom Baptist in Rural Hall, or I guess Rural Hall, which is a good Bible-believing church. The other one, they never tell me where he went to church at, but it's an opportunity to talk to people. I didn't plan on that morning going out and talking to 2 police officers about their salvation. So you talk to who you have, people you know. That's all we can do. But we have to do it. Aren't you glad somebody one day told you about Jesus? You're not mad at them, are you? So there's the laws, work of God. Remember Ezra 9 or Nehemiah 1 especially. You know what that talks about, don't you? when they found out that the walls and streets weren't built. You know that because I talk a lot about that. Because we ought to think a lot about that, and that he wept over that. And we should be emotionally caught up in the lives of other people, truly concerned about them, about their souls. Only a man born blind, in John chapter 9. Talk about the miracles of Christ. And so this is a pretty unique situation to take place here. This story here tells us of the way of thinking in those days and times. And it's even true today, that the way people think sometimes. In Acts 28, if you remember the story in Acts 28, the Apostle Paul had been shipwrecked and he came to shore and they were sitting around the fire. And as they were sitting around the fire, what happened?
Snake.
Snake. And what did the people say?
They thought he was gonna die, they were waiting for him to die.
Yeah, but why was he going to die?
They thought God wasn't this.
They thought he's an evil man. He must have been evil. Because how do we know he's evil? Because a snake bit him. Something bad happened to him, therefore he's a bad man. And people today still think that. I mean, even in our churches sometimes. You know, some what happened to somebody, oh, I wonder what they did. I must be judging them.
A lot of jokes fans are out there.
Yeah, but, you know, it's that attitude that we believe, you know, well, you always reap what you sow. So if something bad happened, that means, well, we do reap what we sow, but that doesn't mean bad things won't happen to us. We're living in a cursed world. I mean, what do you think we're going to get out of a cursed world? Blessings all the time? No. You're going to have flat tires. Things wear out, you know. It happens. You're going to get sick. You're going to have problems. That does not mean that God's judging you. Now, you come in, you find out you have cancer, I'm not going to think God's judging you for that. You know, but there are those who do. Now, if something bad happens to me and keeps on happening, I'm thinking, okay, Lord, what did I do? Did I do something wrong? And I investigate my life. Now, I'll never do that with you. Something bad happens to your life, my first thing won't be, well, I bet God's judging it. No, I'll be praying for you. But for me, yeah, I'll consider that. And I'll pray about it, and nothing I see that I'm doing wrong, then I look at them and say, okay, Lord, what can I learn from this? How can I benefit from the situation going on in my life right now, whatever it might be? And if I pray and I don't get any response to that, then I go to the third area. Okay, Lord, how can I use this to help others? How, you know, because this bad thing happened to me, but it might be that I can use this to help other people in life. And you know, that's scriptural. That's 2 Corinthians chapter 1. The comfort that we're comforted with, we can use to comfort others. So we examine ourselves like that. But here in the story of the man born blind, we read a passage out of John 9. And it really is a silly passage in some ways. Because of the way it's
God
worded.
don't have a sense of humor.
Yeah.
He does.
Because Jesus passed by, and they saw a man which was blind from his birth. And his disciples asked the question, right? Master, who did sin? This man or his parents that he was born blind? How much trouble did you get into in the womb? I mean, but yet that's their question. And I'm thinking, why would they ask such a question? Because that's the way people thought in those days. It's always something bad. Oh, they did something bad. They're going to happen. You know, the person's blind. I saw in the news last week, I think it was last week, and I'm thinking it's Reedsville, somewhere around here where there was a baby was born with no eyes. And I'm thinking how sad that is. You know, it's amazing what blind people can do. You know, you had a student who was blind. He went blind when he was 18 years old. And I'm thinking, that's got to be tough when you're 18 years old, especially, you know, and how bitter you can get. But he wasn't bitter. I learned a lot from him. He took notes in Braille. And I never thought about Braille before. You know, I knew what it was, raised bumps on paper. But to write Braille, you have to push down in the paper. So you push down, you have to write in one direction and then turn it over and read it in the opposite direction.
Oh.
Because you're reading the bump, so I guess it's right, or left to right, you write the words and then you turn it over and then you go right to left to read back to it. I thought that's pretty amazing. Then he told me one day, he said, I wish they'd invent a fork for blind people to eat with. And I thought, well, they do. I mean, why can't you? He said, no. He says, like when they eat cake. He says, it's one of the most frustrating things in the world to eat cake. And I'm thinking, okay, why? He said, because cake is light, and you put it on your fork, and when you lift it up, if it falls off, you don't know it. And so he says, I'm sitting there trying to eat, and there's nothing on my fork. And I'm thinking, oh, man, I never thought of that. You know, a lot of things that they deal with. But this man overcome all that stuff. I mean, he wasn't bitter. In fact, it was a church that he was at, and I was sitting beside him on the pew, and we got up to sing. And he got his hymn book and opened it up, and I'm thinking, why do you have a hymn book? But he just wanted to fit in, I guess. So he it might have been upside down for all I know, but he had a hymn book. And I'm thinking, okay, you know, that's great. I mean, people can't overcome things like that to a large degree. That'd be the hardest thing for me. If I went blind, I think that'd be more devastating than lose my hearing. I don't have a problem with that because a lot of people don't want to listen to it anyway. So, but blind, that'd be tough. But here, the assumption is that his parents did something or he did something. And that's definitely the wrong assumption. Because Jesus said, neither did this man sin or his parents, but that the works of God should be made manifest in him. So, you know, why is this baby born blind? Well, God can be manifested. I mean, just a lot of things. I mean, we had a baby in our church years ago, probably 30 years ago now, that was extremely premature, and they said the oxygen that they gave to the baby caused that to be blind. So I don't know whatever happened, they moved away. But God didn't be glorified through those things. We do need to understand that. And just because somebody has a health issue or what have you, it does not mean that God is judging them. Now, could it be? Yeah, it could. It could. We don't know that. But if God is chastening you for something, that's none of my business. It's none of my business. It doesn't affect me. I can't do anything to help you or to hurt you or whatever, so it doesn't affect me in any way whatsoever. So I'm not going to let that be an issue between me and you. If God is chasing you, you're the one that would identify that, not somebody else. And we have too many people making those accusations, say, oh, God judged you because you did this, or you wouldn't help me the other day, so God getting back with you. No.
Ezekiel 18, Brother Doug, in verse 20, there it says, the son shall not bear the iniquity of the father iniquity of the son.
Yeah, I think it's Deuteronomy 24 says basically the same thing. The sins of the father shall not be passed on to the son. When suffering comes, we tend to dwell on why. What was the skater? Why? Tanya Harding, that's what was her name? That's
The girl that, Nancy.
Kerrigan.
Yeah.
Poor thing. I mean, I felt bad for her really, but it was the wrong response because people make fun of her. But the fact is, we do say why. Well, there's nothing wrong with asking God why. I think it's important that we ask God questions. I think we should ask God questions about anything and everything that's going on in our life. I do not think we should question God, but we should ask God questions. Okay, there's a big difference in that. Questioning means you don't know what you're doing. But asking why. Why did this happen? Why is this going on? Why, whatever. And God is ready to respond to those type of questions of why. He might not tell you. You know, you may not ever find out why, or maybe you ask why for a long time, and finally you get the understanding. I know things might have in my life I asked God why, and didn't get it. I mean, I'm thinking the enemy's winning over me. I mean, I've had people try to destroy the ministry, and it seemed like they were victorious over it, and they were having people who opposed me that I never even knew, and I'm thinking, why, Lord, why is this happening? And I just don't understand. And, you know, later on, I realized that those people helped me in more ways than they ever hurt me. They helped me because it made me reflect on my relationship with God. It made me change the way that I was doing everything with my devotions. You know, I changed the way that my prayer life. I changed the way I prayed for people. I changed the way I prayed for myself. I changed the way I read the Bible. And you got illuminated, I know. But what it did, it made my relationship with God fresh again. You know, I was more in a routine in the past, and then I changed that. And now I change my routine every once in a while to make sure that I'm not doing the exact same day as I did before, and it not mean anything.
And when those two women attacked me in Sunday school, and they were totally wrong, I never said anything, but do you know what that made me do? That made me buckle down and study hard to make sure that everything I said, it was in God's will, and I was saying the truth of God's word.
So, talking about 2 Corinthians chapter 12 a while ago, with Paul praying 3 times that the thorn in the flesh be removed, and God said no. And like I say, I believe, and I really do believe that 2 Corinthians 12 is talking about a person, a messenger of Satan to buffet him. I know people say it's health or eyesight, whatever. I don't see that in any way whatsoever, but I do see it being a person because of Judges 2:3 and Numbers 33:55. That thorns in the flesh. The Old Testament were people, so I'm assuming Paul meant that. But nevertheless, whether he did or didn't, it don't matter because it can be applied that way. Those, you know, say a pastor of a church has this deacon that every time the pastor wants to do something, he knows that deacon's going to oppose it. So I get up there and I know good well he's going to say something. So what's he do? He makes sure that he gets more than prepared to do it, to build a building, whatever. He seeks everything out, and so when this guy asks questions, he has all the answers. Well, that guy helped him. Because if he didn't have that guy, he might get up there halfway, do something. So we can learn from those experiences. Doesn't mean it's pleasant. Paul didn't like it.
It wasn't
I
pleasant.
mean, he prayed 3 times, and that probably wasn't just 3 times in a row. He probably over a period of time he's been praying about that, and God says no. But Lord, he's hurting me. Well, so you challenge disciples to focus on this. So what? What's suffering?
My boss at work, he's actually really funny to get to me a lot. And he told Jamie and Jen when they came to see him, he said, she is a thorn on my flesh. And I said, but remember what God said, my grace is sufficient for thee.
Just deal with it. Why is this person born blind? It doesn't make a difference. They are born blind. So can God be glorified? Well, as you said, the works of God will be made manifest. Romans 8:28 says all things work together for good for them who love the Lord and are called according to his purpose. And that is absolutely true. Right? However, we need to temper the word with compassion. When I was in Bible college, I had a friend of mine who, he was married, had 2 kids. Him and a bunch of us, 2 or 3 of us would talk about the Bible sometimes. One day he went home. He got mad at his 2 kids for whatever reason, yelled at them, and then went in the closet and hung himself. And to hang himself, the closet rail was short, and he was probably 6 foot. So he had to hold his legs up and hang himself. I don't know why. I mean, I don't know why, what's going on in his life. I don't know what happened. But one of the professors that night went to his widow and told her, well, you know, all things work together for good. If I was there, I got kicked out of college that night because I'd smack. I'm thinking, yes, all things do work together good. I understand that because the Bible says that. But we have to temper it with compassion. There's a time and a place. She will learn when all things work together for good. Right? In her life at whatever time. Her kids will learn that whatever time. But that night was not the time for that. And so we do have to make sure that we temper the Word of God with compassion. We don't use it flippantly, because that was flippantly. It's just, I don't know what to say. I got to say something. You know what? If you're around somebody who's going through a hard time and you don't know what to say, that's what you're supposed to say. It's nothing. You don't have to say, well, I understand, because you don't. You don't have to understand, what's going on. All you have to do is put your arm around them and say, I'm praying, and if you need me, call me. But that's all. You don't have to give a solution to what they're going through. Unless God gives you something, insight into it. But if you don't have anything to say, that's what you should say. Attention effort should be on knowing and doing what will result in good, our good, and God's glory. Because down the line, you'll learn that. If you're going to do something right now, you may not get it. But you're getting it now because God's teaching you something. And sometimes the lessons take a while. If finally you get it. And that's when you realize, well, you know what, Lord, you said it was true, and it is. Continuing in John here, then. Jesus said in verse 4, I must work the works of him that sent me while it is day. The night cometh when no man can work. As long as I'm in the world, I am the light of the world. When he had thus spoken, he spat on the ground and made clay of the spittle, and he anointed the eyes of the blind man with the clay. And he said to him, go wash in the pool of Siloam, which is by interpretation sent. He went his way therefore and washed, and came seeing. The neighbors therefore, and they which before had seen him that he was blind, said, is not this he that sat and begged? Some said, well, this is he. Others said, well, it's like him. But he said, I am he. Therefore said they unto him, how were thine eyes opened? He answered and said, a man that's called Jesus made clay and anointed mine eyes, and said to me to go to the pool of Siloam and wash. And I went and washed, and I received my sight. Then said they unto him, where is he? He said, I know not. Now, when you're looking at miracles in the Bible, when there's a physical action that takes place, and this is observation, there's no verse that tells us this, but I've noticed that every time there's a physical application, like the clay, you put it in his eyes, goes to the pool, every single time that person is unsaved. When there's no physical action that takes place and Jesus heals somebody, then normally he says what?
You're healed, go.
Yeah, and thy faith has made you whole. So when there's no physical action take place, the person's saved. When there's a physical action, the person's lost. Was this person lost? Yes, we know he was lost. Right? Because he don't know, he said, who did this? Well, a man named Jesus. Where's he at? I don't have a clue. Right? So Jesus called out here in verse 13, Luke. They brought to the Pharisees him that aforetime was blind, or the man was taken to the Pharisees. And it was a Sabbath day when Jesus made the clay and opened his eyes. And we all know you're not supposed to heal on Sabbath, right? Mm-hmm. Even though, does the Bible say that? No. Was there Old Testament law about that? Mm-hmm. No. That was their law. But, in their mind, we said it, it's true. And so, Pharisees asked him how he had received his sight. He said unto them, he put clay upon mine eyes, and I washed, and I do see. Therefore said some of the Pharisees, this man's not of God, because he keepeth not the Sabbath day. Others said, well, how can a man that is a sinner do such miracles? And there was a division among them. And they said unto the blind man again, what sayest thou of him, that he's opened thine eyes? He said, well, he's a prophet. But the Jews did not believe concerning him that he had been blind and received his sight, until they called the parents of him that had received his sight. And they asked them, saying, Is this your son, who you say were born blind? How then doth he now see? His parents answered them and said, We know not that this is our son, and that he was born blind. So his parents thought, What are you talking about? I don't know. But by what means he now seeth, we know not. Why didn't they answer? They did not take the responsibility of the Pharisees. If we tell them this is our son and that he was born blind, then they're going to attack us.
Because they're going to say, what sin did you do?
Yeah. And so they completely denied their own son. It really is an amazing thing. I mean, think about that.
But it's like,
Well, I must have
You know,
missed that,
I mean-
'cause I never got that part.
Yeah.
That they denied him. I thought they were saying, well, he's old enough, let him answer for
Yeah.
himself.
Well, it goes on though. This word spake his parents because they feared the Jews. For the Jews had agreed already that if any man did confess that he was Christ, he should be put out of the synagogue. So we don't know what happened. Then they say, therefore said his parents, well, he's of age, ask him.
Oh, yeah.
So we kind of skipped over that part about that, but again, they're not claiming his son. They said, well, he looks old enough to answer. Then again called they the man that was born that was blind, said to him, Give God the praise, we know that this man is a sinner. He answered and said, Well, whether he be a sinner or no, I know not. One thing I know, that whereas I was blind, now I see. So the blind man still says, I can't tell you who did it. I mean, all I know, I was blind, and now I see. Right? That's all there is to it. He answered them, I have told you already, and you did not hear. Wherefore would you hear it again? So, I asked him once, but I'm not. I can see it. I couldn't see. You tell me. We know that God spake unto Moses, as for this fellow, we know not from whence he is. The man answered and said unto them, Why hearing is a marvelous thing that you know not from whence he is, and yet he hath opened mine eyes. Now we know that God heareth not sinners, but if any man be a worshipper of God, and doeth his will, him he hears. Since the world began, was it not heard that any man opened the eyes of one that was born blind? If this man were not of God, he could do nothing. So the former blind man at least is defending him. So I know he's a prophet. Well, what about Moses? Well, I don't know. I'm telling you, I was blind, now I can see. And, could a sinner do this? I wouldn't think so. Right? I mean, all I know, I was blind, now I can see. If this man weren't of God, could he have done what he did? No. Obviously, we'll call him a prophet. Still not recognizing him as to who he
I
is.
like the third one. Someone gets tired of them.
Yeah. And answering said to him, Thou wast altogether born in sins as us, and dost thou teach us? So, and they cast him out. So the Pharisees are upset because this man is making sense, and they don't have an answer for it. And so they get out of here. Now, verse 35, Jesus comes back. Jesus heard that they had cast him out. And when he had found him, he said unto him, Dost thou believe on the Son of God? And he answered, said, Who is he, Lord, that I might believe on him? So now the man gets saved. Jesus said, And thou hast both seen him, and he that talketh with thee. And he said, Lord, I believe. And he worshiped him. So the healing had nothing to do with salvation. Jesus healed, saved, and lost apart. It didn't make any difference. I've noticed with physical act, the person's lost. With there's non-physical act, usually the word, thy faith has made thee whole, is included in that. And so then we see now the man gets saved. Jesus said, For a judgment I come into this world, that they which see not might see, and they which see might be made blind. And some of the Pharisees who were with him heard these things and said, Are we blind also? You got that right. It's the KDK version. Jesus said, If you were blind, you should have no sin. But now you say, We see. Therefore your sin remaineth. So again, the miracle here, moving with compassion, the lesson that just because something bad is going on in your life doesn't mean that you've sinned. Doesn't mean God is judging you. I mean, God has a lesson for you in some way whatsoever.
Did I ask him again? And he was like so tired of that, he said, what if I tell you, are you gonna be his disciples too, or something like that?
Yes.
I thought it was one more time.
Yeah, so that's first.
Yeah.
That's what I was saying.
Yeah, that's what I said, I love the third part, because he's so exhausted with them. It's like, oh, you're gonna be his disciples too?